Thank you all for coming out on this rainy, rainy day. I appreciate you all coming here. I see so many familiar faces, and I do appreciate you. My name's Michele, so you know who I am. I'm Michele. I wrote and directed this play. I'm playing one of the parts, and I'm so thrilled that you're here to play along. It's a courtroom drama, and you play the part of the jury. So I want you to listen to all of the evidence, and at the very end of the play, I want you to look at the back of your program, point your phone at this QR code, and you can vote guilty or not guilty. Mr. Logan Grimwald, yes. So let me tell you a little bit about this theater and this space that you're at here today. This event is sponsored by the Town of Southeast Cultural Arts Coalition, the little cushion you're sitting on. Check out their website, theculturalartsco.com. And there's lots of upcoming events. We've done some shows here in October, and there's something coming up for the holidays. On December 2nd, we're going to have something with the Why Not Sisters. And they sing a song called All I Want for Christmas is Cheese. So you definitely need to check them out. The opening act is going to be the Monkeytown Milk Spillers, and that's a local band here, and your very own Detective Rosie Ryan is in that band. So this area is just filled with lots of creative beings. So please check out the website, sign up for the newsletter, and see what's happening here. Now, we've also been sponsored by the New York State Council on the Arts. So the governor himself is sponsoring us, and the New York State legislator. So these events are all also sponsored by contributions from people like you. Your ticket purchase here today has helped sponsor a fund that is hoping to restore this old, beautiful theater that was built in 1896. Yes, right? And you can feel it. There's a little worn spot on the stage here where thousands of people before me have stood on this stage. So thank you for coming. Please keep coming. And I also want to give a shout out to the Harvest Moon Farm and Orchard. They're the ones that decorated the place for the fall. All the pumpkins, the corn stalks, the gourds. So it really takes a village. So thank you all for coming. Please silence your phones. I think you all know now the bathrooms are around the corner. That's one of those updated renovations we want to make. But the restroom, the show time is only 45 minutes, so you should be good. After the show, we're going to have a welcome reception. You're all welcome to stay. Let's mill around. Let's talk about it, guilty or not guilty. I'm not going to tell you what happened yesterday, but both counselors are fighting hard today to win their case. So listen to the evidence. In the unlikely case of an emergency, there's only one way out of here. But the good news is it's the same way you came in. So if anything happens, we're going to calmly and politely walk towards the doors, out those stairs, and we meet over here in the parking lot of the public library. Kirk Dugan is our fire marshal. He's going to get us all out safe. So thank you all so much for coming. Without any further ado, enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want to thank you for your attention throughout this lengthy trial. Over the past few weeks, you've been presented with testimony from investigators, experts, and character witnesses. You've even had an opportunity to visit the scene of the crime. We're at a point where you will have to determine if Mr. Logan Grimwald is guilty of murdering his wife, Juliet. At this time, the state will call their next witness. Prosecutor Lockwood, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Detective Rosie Ryan.
Detective Ryan, please raise your right hand so I can place you under oath. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Detective Ryan, what is your background in law enforcement?
I worked at the 84th Precinct in New York City for about 7 years, and then I transferred up to this department about 3 years ago.
Can you confirm if you were on duty the night of the Grimwald murder?
Yes, I was working the midnight shift.
Can you tell the jury about the call that came in at 6:15 that morning?
The dispatch reported a dead body at the Grimwald residence.
Please describe what happened when you arrived at the scene.
I approached the nervous man on the sidewalk who had discovered the body. He was visibly upset and motioning toward the backyard. I confirmed he was Gilson, the landscaper who had come to clean up the leaves.
And what did you do next?
I instructed Gilson to stay put, and I went around in the back of the house. The victim's petite body was twisted awkwardly in the fallen leaves, and she was face down near the sliding glass doors, and her long, dark hair was matted with blood.
What, if anything, was your initial reaction to the scene?
The violence seemed over the top. The amount of blood indicated that the killer kept striking long after she was dead. It looked like a case of overkill.
A case of overkill. In your experience, what usually provokes this kind of violence?
This intensity suggests a crime of passion, something personal.
Would this imply that the killer knew the victim?
Objection, leading the witness, Your Honor.
Sustained. Please rephrase the question.
Is this the kind of crime usually committed by a stranger?
No, in fact, homicide is the least likely crime to be committed by a stranger.
The least likely crime. What was determined to be the cause of Juliet's death?
Blunt force trauma. She basically bled to death.
And what kind of weapon was used to cause this blunt force?
The murder weapon was never found, and the injuries were unusual. The autopsy revealed long, thin cuts to the back of the head.
Would you please describe the Grimwald property?
The house sits on several acres of wooded land, and the backyard borders a forest reserve.
What, if anything, did you retrieve from the backyard?
We recovered an overturned chair, a broken wine glass, and the victim's laptop.
Detective Ryan, what did you find when you searched the house?
Well, we found no signs of forced entry. There were several empty bedrooms in the house, but none of the beds had been slept in.
What did the condition of the house tell you?
That the perpetrator did not enter or exit through the house. We believe the attack started and ended in the backyard.
And what did you do next?
I checked the two-car garage and found only the victim's car. The SUV was missing.
And who was the SUV registered to?
Logan Grimwald, the victim's husband.
And where did you find Mr. Grimwald?
Found him across town. He was sleeping in his office.
Did you question him as a suspect?
We brought him down to the station for questioning, but his father was waiting with a lawyer.
Is that unusual?
Not for the Grimwald family.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no more questions. The state rests.
Thank you, Prosecutor Lockwood. Defense Attorney Zorelli, you may cross-examine this witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Ryan.
It's Detective Ryan.
My apologies, Detective Ryan. Now, isn't it true that you attempted to question my client even after he requested counsel?
We requested an interview, but he refused.
Okay, isn't it true that you obtained a warrant to search my client's clothes for traces of blood?
That is correct.
How much blood did you find?
We didn't find any blood. However, Mr. Grimwald delayed the process long enough to manipulate it.
What do you mean by manipulating?
Mr. Grimwald didn't hand over his personal belongings for almost 24 hours. And by the time he took a breathalyzer, he was sober as a judge.
I see. Detective, what else, if anything, was discovered during the course of the autopsy?
The medical examiner discovered clumps of bloody hair in the victim's hands.
Whose hand?
was determined to be the victim's own hair, pulled from the root.
And whose blood?
The blood was tested and also determined to belong to the victim.
Okay, so it was the victim's hair, the victim's blood. Was anything else found in the victim's hand?
There was some debris from the backyard.
Can you be more specific, Detective?
Dirt, leaves, and a few feathers.
Feathers? What kind of
Yeah,
feathers?
bird feathers.
What kind of bird?
Objection, relevance.
Counsel Zorelli, where are we going with this?
Well, Your Honor, the autopsy report, which has been entered into evidence, clearly states that microscopic aloe feathers were found clenched in the victim's head.
Overruled. I'll allow it.
Detective, can you please confirm, were there aloe feathers found in the victim's hand?
Well, that is what the medical examiner noted.
Thank you. Now, Detective, who else did you question in connection with this crime besides my client?
We eliminated multiple persons of interest. I'm not at liberty to name them all, but I can tell you that we did not investigate any owls.
It's not a laughing matter, Detective. The man's life is on the line here. Well, what about Gilson, the landscaper? Was he questioned?
He was, and quickly cleared.
Shouldn't the person who finds the body be considered a prime suspect?
Gilson has no history of violence.
Well, neither does my client, yet here he sits. What about that?
Over the past year, the police have responded to multiple domestic calls at the Grimwald residence.
Yes, Detective, but we all have our familial disputes. I mean, it's hard to know what goes on, behind closed doors. Wouldn't you agree?
But the victim's laptop revealed quite a bit about the couple's volatile relationship.
Okay, let's talk about the laptop. Juliet was a mystery writer. It must have been pretty hard to find fact from fiction in her laptop. Your Honor, I have here a piece of evidence marked 1B. This is Juliet's browser history from internet searches. These are her last few Google searches. Detective, can you please read what she was searching for before she died?
Train schedules to Grand Central Station, side effects of lithium, herbal teas for sleep, astrologers near me. How much chloroform does it take to kill someone?
How much chloroform does it take to kill someone? What do you make of that, Detective?
Yeah, I'll admit, it did give me some pause, but I reasoned the results were because of Juliet's profession.
Okay, well then did you check with her publisher?
Oh, we did. They confirmed Juliet was working on several story ideas, but she apparently missed the last 2 deadlines.
She's missing deadlines, all right. Did you check with her longtime therapist?
Yes, we spoke with Dr. Spencer, but most of the information was privileged.
Even so, you were able to obtain a list of her prescription medications, isn't that right?
Yes, she was taking multiple psychiatric medications on a daily basis.
And didn't these multiple psychiatric medications include side effects such as paranoia and volatile mood swings?
Are you suggesting Juliet did this to herself?
Oh, certainly not, Detective. What I'm suggesting is that there were other possibilities to explore, yet the investigation, which you headed, fixated on my client. Wouldn't you say that's right?
Well, the spouse is always considered a suspect in a murder investigation.
A suspect, yes, but not the only suspect, Detective. One last question. Can you please define the term tunnel vision for us?
Tunnel vision is a single-minded and overly narrow focus of an investigation.
Thank you, Officer Ryan. I couldn't have
That's
said it better myself.
Detective.
Your Honor, no more questions.
Detective Ryan.
Detective Ryan, you may step down. Counsel Zorelli, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls to the stand Miss Charlotte Feathers.
Your Honor, the state strongly objects to Ms. Feathers testifying as an expert witness.
And just what is this witness's expertise?
Your Honor, Miss Charlotte Feathers specializes in forensic astrology.
Is forensic astrology a recognized science?
It is recognized in many circles.
Recognized but not respected. Your Honor, please, this is ludicrous.
Is this witness able to testify in any other capacity besides as an expert?
Your Honor, the witness in question was a personal acquaintance of Miss Grimwald. She could definitely testify as a character witness.
I'll allow it, but tread lightly, Counselor Zorelli.
Thank you.
Bring her in. Charlotte Feathers, please raise your right hand so I can place you under oath. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat. I'd like to instruct you to not leave the witness area until you are instructed to do so.
Yes, Your Honor.
Afternoon, Miss Feathers.
Nice to see you again, Counselor.
Right. Miss Feathers, Charlotte, can you please tell us what you do for a living?
Oh, I provide astrological services, and please call me Charlie.
Okay, Charlie. Could you tell us a little more specifically what you do?
Oh, I analyze astrology charts, mostly for when someone is born or when someone dies.
And who do you provide this service for?
Oh, the general public. I also work extensively with law enforcement agencies.
Now, I'm not so familiar with astrology. Can you tell us how an astrology reading works?
Well, sir, all I need is the date and time of an event, and I can cast a chart that examines the planetary energies for that moment in time.
Okay, and what is these planetary energies? What does that tell us?
Oh, well, it can help provide clarity and insight and help articulate any patterns.
Thanks. Miss Feathers, do you ever encounter a stigma around what you do for a living?
Well, sure, but after all, astrology is much more accepted now because we are living in the age of Aquarius.
Right, of course. We are. Miss Feathers, how well did you know Juliet?
Oh, I'd see her around town waiting at the train station. And once she came to me for an astrology reading.
Really? Huh, interesting. Your Honor, I have here a piece of evidence marked 2C, submitted by the defense. This is the birth chart that Miss Feathers made for Juliet during their meeting. Is that the chart?
Oh, yes, this is Juliet's birth chart. It was just a few weeks before she was killed.
And what's your interpretation of said chart?
Well, see, it's heavily influenced by Pisces. This watery energy is very dreamy and creative and probably contributed to Juliet's success as a writer.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you can tell from the chart?
Well, with Saturn ruling the fourth house of home, she may have felt an authoritative influence looming over her.
Okay. Did she resonate with these findings?
She confirmed the presence of an authoritarian, and she hinted at the Grimwald family as the source.
Did you discuss anything else with Juliet?
Let's see. Well, she expressed surprise at being able to see her house from my front porch. I live on the other side of the woods, you see.
Oh, really? Can you see to the backyard from your house?
Oh, no. There are far too many trees for that.
Do you suppose there are owls living in those trees?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained. Counsel Zorelli, ask your next question.
Very well, Your Honor. Miss Feathers, maybe tell us a little bit more about the origins of forensic astrology.
Oh, sir, since the Middle Ages, forensic astrology has been used to solve secrets, mysteries, and crime.
How is forensic astrology used in this crime?
Well, I was commissioned to cast a death chart for Juliet.
Really? So the police commissioned you to make a death chart for Juliet Grimwald. Your Honor, 3C, can you confirm that this is the death chart that you prepared for the police?
Oh, yes, this is very troubling.
Troubling, how so?
Well, the placement of the moon that night suggests that the action played out swiftly and silently.
I see. And what about anything else about the crime?
There's this Aries-Libra opposition across her midheaven right at the time of her death. Generally, that's seen as a very malefic aspect.
Malefic, how so?
Well, it tends to have an obsessive, ruthless, and violent nature.
What does this nature suggest?
Well, it would suggest that this attack played out unexpectedly, shockingly. It was not premeditated with intent.
Objection. This testimony is wildly speculative and prejudicial for the jury to hear. Your Honor, may I please approach?
You may. And I've made a decision. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been chosen for this case because we trust in your ability to reason through the evidence. I'm going to allow Charlotte Feathers to continue her testimony. However, I must remind you that astrology is not admissible as evidence. Counselor Zorelli, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Miss Feathers, isn't it true that a death chart for a murder investigation can actually identify unique characteristics of a perpetrator?
Oh, yeah, it can certainly help build a profile.
Well, what's the profile you're getting here?
Well, with the Aries energy, it would indicate someone who is very impulsive, someone intelligent, someone very protective of their family.
Now, what about physical traits? I hear you can actually tell some things about what a killer looks like.
Exactly right, sir. This chart suggests a perpetrator who had large, dark eyes and asymmetrical ears.
Miss Feathers, is there anything to indicate where to look for this killer?
Oh, well, with the activity in the third house, I would stick close to home. This is someone comfortable in the surrounding area. This isn't a stranger passing through.
It's not a stranger. Okay. Well, is there anything at all to implicate my client, Logan Grimwald, was involved in this murder?
Well, the spouse usually shows up in the seventh house of partnerships.
Okay.
In Juliet's death chart, the seventh house is completely empty.
So what does that tell us?
That would tell me that Mr. Grimwald had no real influence over this event.
Thank you, Sean. I have no more questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Prosecutor Lockwood, you may begin your cross-examination.
Miss Feathers, how many cases have you supported with forensic astrology?
Oh, I've advised in over 100 cases, although most law enforcement agencies are hesitant to admit it.
And how many cases have you solved with forensic astrology?
Well, the Olivia case comes to mind because the fixed star in the house of siblings, which led us to his brother.
So just the one case?
Well, no, the Olivia case comes to mind because it received a lot of media attention.
Miss Feathers, with all due respect, if my conviction rate was 1 out of 100, I would have been fired years ago.
Your Honor, argumentative and no question there.
Withdrawn. I have no more questions for this witness.
That was sustained, and very well. The jury is instructed to disregard this last comment. Miss Feathers, you may leave. Hey, you may step down. Counselor Zorelli, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, may I have a moment to confer with my client?
A moment.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to call the defendant, Mr. Logan Grimwald, to stand.
All right, Mr. Grimwald, please come forward and raise your right hand so I can place you under oath. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. All right, Mr. Grimwald, before we begin, let me remind you to please answer the questions verbally with a yes or a no instead of gestures.
Yes, Your Honor. Sure.
And with that in mind, Counselor Zorelli, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, Mr. Grimwald, allow me to take this moment to express my deepest condolences for the loss of your late wife.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Grimwald, first question. Where were you on the night of your wife's murder?
I was working late at the Deerfield office complex.
Okay, what is it you do for work, sir?
I'm an actuary. I analyze financial risk.
All right, and what time did you finish work that night?
Around 10 p.m.
Where did you head after work?
I went down to the lower level to a bar called Down the Hatch.
Now, isn't it true that you stayed at Down the Hatch until it closed at 2 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What time did you go home?
I didn't quite make it home that night.
Okay, so where did you sleep?
I slept on the couch in my office
Why did you do that?
to avoid driving while intoxicated.
Makes sense. Now, how did the police verify your whereabouts?
Well, there are security cameras at the Deerfield office complex.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the defense would like to present Exhibit 22A. This is video from the Deerfield office complex on the night in question. This is Thursday night, 10:10 p.m., as you can see by the timestamp. Mr. Grimwald, do you recognize this man leaving the office on that evening?
That's me.
How could you be so sure?
That's my backpack, and I still have the limp from when I twisted my ankle playing basketball.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grimwald. I'd like to play evidence 22C. This is the same angle, now at 2 a.m., a few hours later on Friday morning. Mr. Grimwald, do you recognize this man returning to the Deerfield office complex?
Yeah, that's me again.
How can you be so sure?
The backpack, the limp, and I'm wearing the same clothes.
Thank you, Mr. Grimwald. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let the record show that my client, Logan Grimwald, has identified himself both leaving and returning to the office on the night of the murder, as you all saw on camera. Now, Mr. Grimwald, we have you leaving and returning, but how do we verify your time in between?
Well, I used my credit card to pay for drinks at the bar.
Okay, so you went to a bar and you opened a tab.
No, down the hatch doesn't run tabs, so.
Oh, really? So you were required to present your card every time you bought a drink that evening?
Yes, that's right.
Mr. Grimwald, I have here your credit card statement, including the night in question. Your Honor, this is 6C. Mr. Grimwald, do you recognize these timestamp charges from the down the hatch bar?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Now, why wasn't this evidence enough for the police to verify your alibi?
Well, the police seem to think that I killed my wife in between my drink orders.
Uh-huh. And did you even have time to drive home between
No.
any of these clearly timestamp charges?
No, sir.
Sir, how did you learn of your wife's tragic passing?
Well, I woke up the next morning to a bunch of cops standing over me in my office.
That sounds terrifying. Mr. Grimwald, why were they so suspicious of you in the first place? I mean, do you have a large life insurance policy on your wife or something?
No. Jules was very suspicious about making death profitable.
See, was she a very superstitious person?
Yes, my wife was a murder mystery writer. She thought about death more than most people. In fact, her therapist had mentioned that her profession contributed to her insomnia.
Oh, really? Did Juliet often have trouble sleeping?
Almost every night.
What did she do when she couldn't sleep?
She'd get up and write, usually in the backyard.
Do you believe that the weather permitted her to write outside that evening?
Well, it was late September, but she would just grab a blanket or put on a hat if she was cold.
I see. And what was her attraction to writing outside?
Oh, Juliet thought she did her best writing outside. Usually, mostly in the circle of trees that surround our backyard.
Yeah, I believe I read about that in the local paper. Isn't it true that she wrote our New York Times bestseller, Tales of the Deer Witch, in that very backyard?
Yes, that's right. Her imagination was vivid, especially at night.
Mr. Grimwald, I know this is difficult. Where did they find your wife the next morning?
In the leaves. They said she was running back to the house.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained. I'll instruct Mr. Grimwald to speak only to what he's personally seen or experienced.
Mr. Grimwald, do you believe that it's possible that something spooked your wife in the yard that evening?
Objection, calls for speculation. This question requires the witness to guess the answer.
Your Honor, if Miss Lockwood was listening, she'll note that I did not ask the witness to guess anything. I asked him if it was possible.
Overruled. I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Please answer the question.
Yes, Jules spooked easily.
Mr. Grimwald, now please, I know you don't want to think about this, but was there a lot of blood at the crime scene?
Well, according to the pictures that the police kept shoving into my face, yeah, I would say so.
But isn't it also true that when the police found you that next morning at your office, they did not find any blood on you?
That's right.
Not a drop of blood.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained. Ask your next question, Counselor Zorelli.
Very well. Well, I guess the question is, Mr. Grimwald, if the police had no physical evidence to connect you to this crime, then why? Why, sir, are you sitting here today?
Because the police fixated on me and stopped looking for other suspects.
I would agree. Mr. Grimwald, one last question. Did you, Logan Grimwald, did you, sir, did you kill your wife?
No, sir, I did not kill my wife.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no more questions for this witness.
Counselor Lockwood, you may begin your cross-examination of this witness.
Mr. Grimwald, how long is the drive from the Deerfield office complex to your house?
It's about a half an hour, depending on traffic.
Is there usually a lot of traffic in the middle of the night?
No, not usually.
So, the round trip would take you no more than an hour, is that right?
That sounds about right, yeah.
I'm going to need a yes or a no. Please.
Yes, I suppose so.
Do you also suppose that a 4-hour window is enough time to get across town, murder your wife, and get back to the bar?
I was in no condition to drive that night.
Can you tell the court how many drinks you consumed that night, Mr. Grimwald?
I don't recall, no.
Well, were you with anybody in particular at the bar?
No. I mean, I was in a crowded bar. There were lots of people there, but nobody in particular.
What was your drink of choice that night?
I usually drink Hennessy.
What about the Cosmopolitans?
I don't understand the question.
The question was about Cosmopolitans. It's a pink drink served in a fancy glass. Surely you've heard of it.
Yes, I guess I've heard of it.
Do you often find yourself having a pink cocktail while sipping a fine cognac?
Objection ambiguous. Where are we going with this, Your Honor?
Sustained. Please rephrase the question.
Is it true that you were drinking both Cosmopolitans and Hennessy on the night of the murder?
No. Oh. Well, I did buy a drink for someone that night, yeah.
Let me guess. Someone who drinks Cosmopolitans, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you purchased one drink for this mysterious person, is that what you're telling us?
That's what I remember, yeah.
Would it surprise you to learn that your credit card was charged for 6 Cosmopolitans along with 7 glasses of Hennessy?
That would surprise me, yeah.
It surprised me too until I realized you were buying for 2 and someone was matching you drink for drink.
Objection. This is pure speculation.
Sustained. Counselor Lockwood, do you have any evidence to support this line of questioning?
I do, Your Honor.
Overruled. Let's hear it.
Let the record show that on the night of the murder, there was a social media post from @AnitaGoodDickens. It was a photo of the defendant and an unknown woman toasting their drinks to the camera, a Hennessy and a Cosmopolitan. Do you recognize this woman, Mr. Grimwald?
No, she doesn't look familiar, no.
Is this woman your wife?
No.
Is this woman your girlfriend?
No.
Is this woman a hooker? Because
What?
she looks like a pro.
Objection, Your Honor. This woman's profession has no probative value in this case.
I must agree. Just where are you going with this, Counselor Lockwood?
I just want the jury to understand how Mr. Grimwald was spending his time on the night of the murder.
For the sake of the judicial economy, I propose we move on.
And according to the medical examiner's testimony, Juliet's time of death was determined to be just after midnight. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's what they told me.
So isn't it possible that you left the bar immediately after that photo?
No, that's not what happened.
Isn't it true that this mystery lady continued to use your credit card while you were across town pulling your wife?
I told you I was at the bar until it closed.
Right. That's what you told me. But I don't believe you. What I believe is that you stayed at the bar just long enough to create an alibi. Then you went through the wooded area and snuck up on Juliet in the backyard. You hit her over the head.
Objection, Your Honor!
With a weapon.
Your Honor, I strongly object.
To fit into your backpack. Isn't that
Your Honor, she is badgering the witness, Your Honor.
Sustained. Prosecutor Lockwood, please ask your next question.
Mr. Grimwald, would it surprise you to learn that Juliet was having an affair?
I don't believe that.
We retrieved more than 200 text messages between Juliet and an unknown lover. I woke up this morning wishing you were here, and my sheets still smell like you. Do you recognize these messages, Mr. Grimwald? Your Honor, let the record show that this witness is being unresponsive.
You do need to answer the question, Mr. Grimwald.
Do you recognize?
No, I don't.
Would you agree that these texts suggest that Juliet was also having an affair?
It looks that way. Yeah.
And would you agree that infidelity is a compelling motive for murder?
A lot of people have affairs. They don't all get murdered.
You testified that Juliet did her best writing at night.
Yes.
Who else knew that she would be in the backyard at midnight?
Everybody knew that. Family, friends, neighbors. She gave interviews on television about her writing process.
Are you suggesting that a stranger just waltzed into your backyard in the middle of the night?
Well, why not? It's not like we've got barbed wire fence or anything.
And why didn't Juliet scream when a stranger...
How would I know why she didn't scream? I was halfway across town at a bar.
Juliet didn't scream because she knew her murderer.
Objection, Your Honor, there's no foundation here.
Sustained.
Withdrawn. I have no more questions for this witness.
Very well. The jury is instructed to disregard this last statement. Mr. Grimwald, you may step down. Counsel Zorelli, are you prepared to present your closing arguments?
Yes, just one moment, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are at a stage in this process where the attorneys will be presenting their closing arguments.
We are ready, Your Honor.
You may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if it pleases the court, we are here today because of a classic case of tunnel vision. Plain and simple. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the state fixated on my client despite the complete lack of physical evidence connecting him to this heinous crime. I mean, Miss Lockwood would like you to believe that my client, Logan Grimwald, beat his wife to death at a distance, sir, no greater than I stand from you now, without getting a single drop of blood on himself. Not a drop. Why does she want me to believe this? Because that is what fits her narrative. But there are other explanations for this brutal attack that were left unexplored. Throughout this trial, we heard from forensic experts who were unable to find the source of the tri-pronged linear laceration found in the back of Juliet's head. What on earth caused these mysterious injuries? And how did the silent killer get in and out of the backyard without being detected? You see, instead of trying to solve these puzzling clues, the prosecution defaulted to the belief that the husband did. The easy way out. If not him, then who? Or should I say, who? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am referring to a barred owl, a large woodland owl with piercing dark eyes and a wingspan of nearly 4 feet. Owl experts have confirmed that these predators are prevalent in the area of the Grimwald's home and that they are fiercely defensive while nesting. And ladies and gentlemen, it was nesting season. If you remember at the beginning of this trial, we heard testimony from Ron Luna, remember the Grimwald neighbor? He was jogging around the Grimwald property just weeks before the murder when a barred owl swooped down and grabbed his kneecap right off his head. Mr. Luna is very lucky to have come out of that ordeal unscathed. You see, it's events and coincidences, or almost coincidences, like these that should give you a cause to have reasonable doubt. And remember, Judge McGregor explained that in this country, you must find my client guilty beyond a reasonable doubt if you are to find him guilty. Now, I'd like you all to reflect on your visit to the scene of the crime, to the Grimwald property. Think about those looming trees over the property. Now think to yourself, why would Juliet Grimwald be found dead with microscopic owl feathers clenched in her hand? And more so, how interesting it is that the lacerations on the back of Juliet's head are the exact same size and shape as those talons. Ladies and gentlemen, my client, Logan Grimwald, he may not deserve the Husband of the Year award, but that doesn't mean that he killed his wife. Ladies and gentlemen, please do what Miss Lockwood and the prosecution has not, and look at this case with an unbiased lens. If you take time to consider all the facts, all the evidence, and in particular, all the possibilities, you'll have no choice but to find my client not guilty of murder. Your Honor, the defense rests.
At this time, the prosecution will present their closing arguments. Please remember that the state bears the burden of proof. Prosecutor Lockwood, you may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, according to the Bureau of Justice, almost 50% of all murdered females are killed by a family member, not an owl. Now, Counselor Zorelli paints a fantastical picture, but statistics tell us that half the time women are just killed by someone they know. Detective Ryan even confirmed that strangers rarely kill other strangers. Make no mistake, this was a crime of passion. It's the only thing that explains the intensity of the violence. The defense presented microscopic owl feathers as if they were a smoking gun. Heck, we probably all had owl feathers in our hair after we visited the crime scene. The Grimwald backyard is surrounded by tall trees, and yes, I believe there are owls living in those woods. But Occam's razor states that the simplest solution is usually the best. You must decide that solution. Where does the evidence lead? What story does the evidence tell? That an owl swooped in from the night sky, attacked Juliet, causing her death, or that a jealous, intoxicated husband killed his cheating wife. Let's not forget that on the night of the murder, Mr. Grimwald was out with another woman, and Juliet had recently started an affair of her own. We heard from character witnesses who confirmed there was trouble in the marriage. Juliet's own journal entries describe her fears over her husband's mounting gambling debts. We also saw financial records that showed the consequences of his reckless behavior with money and gambling. Ladies and gentlemen, there was tension in this house. Tension in the marriage. A storm was brewing. Let's talk about life insurance. Mr. Grimwald may not have had a life insurance policy on his wife, but he had plenty to gain from her death. After all, he's the sole beneficiary of his wife's estate, which included substantial book royalties. Mr. Grimwald had the motive. He also had the means, since his backpack was never recovered. That backpack that he appeared to never part with, no matter how drunk, vanished. The state theorizes that this is where he stored the murder weapon and a change of clothes. Now, the defense also wants us to believe that the defendant has an airtight alibi. However, there are only glimpses of evidence he was where he says he was during that 4-hour period. Ladies and gentlemen, the only person who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity was the defendant, Mr. Logan Grimwald, and this is why you must find him guilty of murder.
Thank you, counselors. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you may begin your deliberations. This court is adjourned.
We've got wine, we've got sandwiches, we've got cookies, and we'll be out in just a moment to mingle around. But please cast your vote. What do you write?
Ladies and gentlemen,